Welcome back, everybody. It's time for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring a fascinating concept, enlightenment.
Ah,
Enlightenment. And we're going to be approaching it from a really unique angle, I think. We've got just a single source this time. It's an audio recording, and it's titled, Lo que la iluminación es verdaderamente,
okay.
which translates to what enlightenment truly is. So
Okay.
I don't know about you, but when I think about enlightenment, you know, images of like, transcendence and bliss and,
Hmm.
maybe even levitation kind of come to mind.
Right.
Right. But this source kind of throws a curveball.
Yeah.
It suggests that enlightenment isn't about reaching this like, far off state.
Hmm.
It's more about like a deep personal journey of integrating all parts of yourself.
Yeah, and that idea of integration really is the core of what this source is getting at. It's presented as this process of bringing together all the fragmented aspects of yourself, almost like you're assembling a scattered puzzle.
Right, like putting all the pieces together. And the source really emphasizes that we're talking about like all the aspects here,
Yes,
even the ones that we, may not be so fond of.
exactly. It challenges this common idea that we need to banish or overcome these so-called negative qualities in order to reach enlightenment. Instead, it suggests that those aspects, the ones that we try to push away or deny, those actually hold a key to our wholeness.
So it's like this radical idea then to like embrace the things that we dislike about
It
ourselves.
is. It is. And it really kind of goes against a lot of the conventional self-improvement wisdom that we hear about. But to illustrate the point, the source uses this really powerful analogy. Imagine a child who runs away from home. Our natural instinct is to chase after them, scold them, try to force them back, right?
Right.
But what if instead we create this safe and welcoming environment for them to return to? What if we offer understanding and acceptance rather than judgment and rejection?
Okay, so are you saying that these dark aspects of ourselves,
Yeah.
the ones that we might be ashamed of or afraid of, they're kind of like those runaway children. They're just looking for a place to belong and be accepted.
That's the idea. And the source suggests that by creating that space of acceptance within ourselves, that's when we can begin to integrate those fragmented parts and move toward the sense of wholeness.
This really resonates with a concept in psychology called shadow work,
Mm-hmm.
and it emphasizes acknowledging and integrating the aspects of ourselves that we repress, right? So
Mm.
like befriending our shadows rather than fighting them.
Absolutely. And what's really intriguing is that the source acknowledges that some of these aspects, they might actually resist this whole process of integration.
Oh, wow.
They even believe that enlightenment's a gigantic joke.
Like they don't even believe in it.
Yeah, something that's unattainable or even undesirable.
So there could be like parts of us that are actively sabotaging our own growth and happiness.
That's what the source is suggesting. And it attributes this resistance to past hurts and traumas, experiences that have led these aspects to believe that they need to protect themselves, even if that means staying stuck in these familiar patterns of suffering.
Okay, so we've got these fragmented parts of ourselves. Some of them are resistant to the very thing that could bring us peace and wholeness.
Yes,
So
that's complicated.
it is, it's complex.
But the source seems to offer a solution, right? This idea of creating a safe haven inside.
Yeah, and that's where this whole concept of allowing comes in. It's about shifting our approach from one of force and control to one of acceptance and permission, like extending an invitation to those runaway parts of ourselves,
Yeah.
saying, hey, it's okay to come back. You're welcome here. You belong.
So we're not trying to suppress these aspects or mold them into something they're not. It's about acknowledging they're there and creating the space where they can be seen and heard without judgment. Exactly. And the source says this shift in perspective from fighting to allowing is a crucial step in this process of integration and ultimately towards what it defines as enlightenment.
It's not about achieving this perfect, idealized version of ourselves, is it?
Not at all. It's about embracing the totality of who we are with all our flaws and imperfections.
This really challenges how we usually view enlightenment.
Yeah.
It's more about radical self-acceptance.
Absolutely. And that brings us to one of the most powerful statements in this entire recording. I am that I am. No exceptions, nothing. I accept it all. It's like this complete and unconditional surrender to the fullness of our being.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a statement. It makes you wonder how we actually even cultivate that level of acceptance.
Yeah.
Like how do we create that safe haven inside and invite those parts of ourselves to come home?
Yeah, that's really the big question, isn't it? How do we create that space where all parts of us feel safe enough to just be themselves? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this source really dives into that whole idea of allowing Like even welcoming in the aspects of ourselves we might have spent our whole lives trying to hide or get rid of.
Right. It's like the complete opposite of how we usually approach personal growth, right? Like we're always focused on fixing what we think is broken or trying to become this better version of ourselves, this like idealized version.
Right, always striving for something.
Exactly. And this source is saying, hey, maybe that's not the way to true wholeness.
Yeah, maybe we're going about it all wrong.
Maybe we are. It's suggesting the real change happens when we stop fighting ourselves and just embrace everything we are. You know, it's like
Right.
instead of trying to force a square peg into a round hole, we recognize that, hey, the peg's perfect as it is. Let's build a square hole for it.
Yeah, I like that analogy. So it's about honoring like the worth of every part of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
even the parts that seem messy or uncomfortable,
Mm.
recognizing they have something to teach us, something to offer our well-being.
And that's where this idea of integration becomes so powerful. The source uses this metaphor of bringing all of our scattered energy back together, almost like gathering up lost sheep and guiding them back to the fold. And as those parts integrate, as they feel seen and accepted, something really cool
Oh,
happens.
it's that.
That's when the real magic starts to happen, according to this source at least.
Interesting. So by embracing all those parts of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we unlock all this new energy, creativity potential, like all the pieces were always meant to fit together. And then we finally experience that wholeness we never thought was possible.
That's the idea. And that wholeness, that sense of resolution, that's what this source is calling enlightenment. Not transcending our human experience, but like fully embracing it, accepting all of it, even the messy parts. It's about saying yes to everything we are. No holding back, no judging.
That makes that phrase from the recording even more powerful, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I am that I am, no exceptions, nothing, I accept it all.
It's a powerful statement of self-acceptance,
Right.
recognizing our inherent worthiness, no matter our flaws or what we perceive as shortcomings.
Right. It's about realizing our true power is not in rejecting parts of ourselves, but in embracing them,
Mm-hmm.
integrating them into who we are. Realizing every experience, every emotion, every thought, it all has a place in our journey. And even those challenging parts of us, they can be sources of growth and wisdom.
It's not about being this perfect, polished version of ourselves. It's about embracing the raw, authentic, imperfect beings that we already are.
That's it. It's about recognizing that those imperfections aren't something to be ashamed of, but something to be honored, integrated into who we are.
Yep.
And that brings us to a really important question.
What's that?
What if inner peace isn't about some external goal or some distant state of enlightenment? What if it's about making peace within? Cultivating harmony and acceptance inside ourselves? What if the real battle isn't with the world, but with our own resistance and judgment and fear of embracing who we are?
That's deep. And that ties back to that idea of non-attachment, right? Like you were talking about before.
Exactly. It's not about suppressing our desires or emotions,
Hmm.
but shifting how we relate to them.
Learning to observe them without judgment, without getting caught up in those stories we tell ourselves about who we are and who we should be.
Yeah, like letting go of those limiting beliefs.
Non-attachment is about realizing we're not our thoughts or our emotions or our experiences. We're the awareness that sees those things, the spaciousness that holds them. And when we connect to that awareness, that spaciousness, we free ourselves from our own minds.
Free ourselves from all that striving and seeking.
Yeah. And we can finally experience true peace and fulfillment.
So it's about cultivating presence,
Mm.
being fully present with whatever comes up, without holding on to what's pleasant or pushing away what's unpleasant, recognizing every moment has something to teach us, even the challenging ones.
You got it. And that leads us to the heart of this source's message. Enlightenment is not about reaching some far-off goal or becoming someone else.
Right.
It's about waking up to who we already are.
With all the messiness and the beauty.
All the complexity. It's about realizing that our wholeness, our completeness, doesn't come from achieving something or getting something. It's in the radical acceptance of ourselves, just as we are.
Yeah, that's a really powerful message, one I think a lot of people can relate to. But I have to admit, this whole accepting everything thing, even the dark stuff, it's kind of mind-blowing.
I know you mean.
How do we actually do that? Do we just sit around and meditate on our flaws?
It's a good question, and it's probably one a lot of people are asking themselves right now. Like, if enlightenment is all about this radical acceptance thing, how do we actually do that? you know?
Yeah, it can be kind of intimidating.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely a journey, not like a destination you arrive at.
Yeah.
And the source even acknowledges it's like this constant process of self-discovery and integration.
Yeah,
It's not about being perfect all of a sudden or never feeling any bad emotions again.
right.
It's about learning to relate to those experiences differently,
Hmm.
meeting them with more compassion and understanding.
Okay, so where do we even begin with that?
Well, the source says that building that safe space inside yourself, it starts with understanding. Remember that analogy of the runaway child?
Hmm.
We got to address why those aspects ran away in the first place. Like, why are they resisting? What are they so afraid of?
So we need to get curious about these parts of ourselves,
Right.
not just try to shut them down or ignore them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that they're not something separate from us, something we need to conquer or get rid of. They're parts of us, and they're usually holding on to old hurts and traumas and beliefs that have shaped how they see things.
Yeah, that makes sense. If we've been hurt or disappointed in the past, some parts of us are going to put up walls.
Hmm.
They're going to be skeptical of anything that promises happiness or fulfillment.
It's totally natural. It's a way of surviving. And this source reminds us that we can't just force those aspects to change their minds. We have to come at them with compassion and understanding.
So like how we talked to that runaway child.
Exactly. We wouldn't yell at them or punish them for leaving. We'd want to understand why they left and how we can make them feel safe enough to come back.
So it's almost like we're reparenting ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. We're creating a more nurturing and accepting environment inside. And as we build that safety, those aspects can start to let go of their defenses, their resistance. The source calls it coming home, integrating back into who we truly are. And in that space of integration, that wholeness, that's where the true enlightenment is.
Now, the source doesn't really lay out specific steps on how to do this right. It's more of a change in how we think and see things.
Yeah, exactly. It's about bringing that spirit of acceptance and allowing into everything we do every day. And even though there's no set roadmap, there are things we can do to help us along the way, like journaling.
Or journaling, yeah.
Can be a really powerful tool for exploring those resistant thoughts and behaviors, for understanding why they're there.
So it's like using journaling to have a conversation with those parts of ourselves. Like we're talking that runaway child, trying to see their perspective and what they need to feel safe and loved.
You got it. And mindfulness meditation can be super helpful too. It helps us become more aware of all those different parts of ourselves, observe them without judging, create space for whatever comes up.
It's like mindfulness helps us step back from those thoughts and emotions so we're not so caught up in them.
Right. We don't have to identify with them so much. And as we cultivate that awareness, that sense of space, we start to loosen the grip of those beliefs and patterns that are keeping us stuck. We realize we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we're not our experiences.
We're something bigger than there.
Exactly. We're the awareness that sees all those things.
Right.
And from that awareness, we can choose how we want to respond to them. We're not controlled by them anymore.
So that's where the real freedom is. Choosing love over fear, acceptance over judgment, embracing everything we are, even the imperfections.
And that's the beautiful thing about this view of enlightenment. It's not about trying to become someone else. It's about discovering the wholeness that's already inside us, just waiting to be seen.
That's such a powerful message, and I think it's something a lot of people really need to hear. So that wraps up our deep dive into this unique perspective on enlightenment. We've explored integrating those different parts of ourselves, the power of radical acceptance, and some ways to bring that acceptance into our lives.
And as we finish up this deep dive, we'll leave you with this question. If every part of us, even the ones we think of as dark or negative, if they're all looking for love and acceptance, how does that change how you see personal growth? How does it change your relationship with yourself and with the world?
Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone. We hope you found it insightful, and maybe it's even inspired a little more self-compassion and acceptance in your own life. Until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep embracing the amazing, complex beings that you are.